Hey guys, what's going on? So we got a couple cars out of the shop, customer cars. So now it's time to actually work on my own stuff. Got the Datsun up on the rack. Got a few things that have been developing on it as I've been putting more mileage on it. So I want to go underneath, clean things up, find the exhaust leak that I've had for a little while. That's been slowly getting worse and worse. So I'm sure it should be probably pretty obvious where it is. And just give it a once over, clean up a few brake lines and some wires and stuff, and just, basic maintenance check. Yeah, we had a heck of a storm last night. You can see the water kind of sitting on the ground there. I'll cut to a clip I took. It was a lot. So we got a little bit of water leakage into the shop, but nothing major, no damage or anything like that. So thankful for that. But yeah, let me turn the camera around. I'll give you a once over underneath this thing, and we'll see if we can find that exhaust leak together. All right, for those of you that haven't been on my channel before, this is my 1972 Datsun 510 two-door sedan. It's on air suspension on a custom chassis. Lots and lots of work done to it. Runs a 13B rotary engine from a 91 RX-7, so an S5, normally aspirated. Lots and lots of work done underneath. Basically nothing done to the body. So call it a patina ride or a rat rod or whatever you want to call it. But it's a whole lot of fun. It's rowdy. It's super, super low. And now that it's been built for about 7 years, it's time to get under it and clean some stuff up and just double check that the fab work we were doing way back then is holding up today. So starting at the front, I'll just give you a quick tour. So we used a Toyota pickup front suspension, narrowed up 4 inches, and dropped the center link to clear the sump on the rotary. Obviously airbagged, drop spindles, made adapter brackets to fit Willwood 4-piston calipers up in there. QA1 shocks, eliminated the tension rods on the lower control arms and made it like an A-arm style setup. From the front suspension running back, it's 2x3 box chassis rails. You can see we've got 2.5-inch stainless exhaust with header wrap running all the way back to the rear axle. The rear end is a Datsun 510 independent rear that's been raised from the stock position about 4.5 inches to help with camber correction when it's all the way laid out and everything. We've got dual Willwood calipers, one for foot brakes and one for a hand brake, airbag brackets, another pair of Slam Specialties bags back here, and that just sits on top of the chassis rails that run back. R200 center section from a 280ZX with a S13 240SX diff cover because I like the fins. Fuel cell with the frame built around it. Yeah, that's pretty much what we got going on. That 2.5-inch exhaust comes back here. We got a vibrant resonator and then a super trap to help calm down the rotary noises. Air suspension's mounted underneath the trunk floor. So we got an airlift 3H, currently in 3P status. That's right, I got to put the height sensors back in. Viair 485C compressor, and then tucked up in there, seamless 28-inch aluminum tank, all running 1/4-inch lines. So we've got some lines and stuff under here that need to be cleaned up. There's a bunch of grime. It looks like we've got a slow leak on the diff. Transmission has a bit of a leak as well, so I'm gonna go through that. Just kind of clean some of this stuff up. Obviously we dragged a little bit, probably just rolling too low, but we'll go through, knock off the spider webs, clean up some lines, maybe get the height sensors back in. I don't know. We got a show next weekend, so just got to sneak in a little bit of work on this thing and see what we can do. But yeah, main thing was clean up, tie up some lines, and then find that exhaust leak. So I think that's up front by the header. Let me see if I can find it real quick, and I'll take you along with me. Well, that didn't take much looking. So up here we've got the header. The primaries are 2-inch down to a 2.5-inch collector and a vibrant 2.5-inch flex joint that has flexed its last flex apparently. Yeah, so this part used to be attached to this part, and then we've got a vibrant V-band connector here. So that's obviously a problem. Yeah, that probably started as just a little gap, and then as I've driven it some more and more, it's widened up because it is loud as shit right now, and it wasn't always that way. It got kind of progressively worse and worse. So the good news is these are in stock at Summit. They're like 40 bucks. So I'll get one of those coming. Today we'll pull the header, pull this V-band off, get this dropped out of the car. You kind of have to jack the engine up a little bit because it gets super tight to the firewall right up in there where it makes that bend. So we'll get this out. I'll pull all of the header wrap off of this thing. Some of it got chewed up a while back, so this will be a good opportunity to rewrap it because that's one of my favorite things. And then while it's apart, I've got an AEM wideband gauge, and for my Defi gauge package, I have a EGT probe. So I'll probably weld the bungs in right here somewhere while I've got it apart. Then we'll rewrap it, get it back up in here, and be ready to roll. Meanwhile, looks like maybe oil pan a little bit leaking. Looks like transmission. I can't tell where that's coming from, but it's only a little bit damp. It doesn't leave spots on the floor, so it may just get to keep on leaking a little bit. I'll just check the level. But yeah, other than that, everything looks pretty solid under here. We'll just tie up a couple of these wires and make sure everything's solid. But yeah, we'll start with header and go from there. Drop the car down because the header needs to come out through the top. So we got all 4 bolts out of it, got the V-band off for what that's worth. It was already basically loose. But as you can see, the engine needs to rotate up on this side. So what I'm going to do, I loosened the motor mount bolt on on this side. I'm going to put a jack under the engine and just pull that bolt out the rest of the way, jack this side up, and that should give us the clearance we need to sneak this header out right over here. So let me get that done and we'll move on from there. Well, I forgot the intake and carb have to come off to make clearance for the header to come out, but no big deal. We got it done. There we go. So header's out. I stuck the bolt back in just temporarily so we could get that jack out from underneath. And yeah, all right. So let me strip all that header wrap off of this header, and we'll check for cracks or damage or anything like that. You can see it rubbed right there when we had a bushing wear out on the motor mount. That's been resolved, but otherwise everything looks good as far as the wrap holding up. So looking forward to redoing that. That's always a fun task. But other than that, so far so good. You know what? I should have gloves on. Hang on. There we go. All right, back at it. You can see where it was on the header, it baked pretty good. And then there, yeah, like one layer wrapped further. So definitely protecting it from the heat. No complaints there. Well, pretty good news actually. Let's see. Obviously it got hot, but I don't see any cracks on anything. It has held up remarkably well. I'm very, very happy to see that. In case you're wondering what this big old step up in size is, at the time we built this, the only hard 90 elbows that were available for 2-inch were the cast style stainless ones. So we went with those and then stepped it down to regular mild steel, or thin wall stainless. This is all stainless. The good news, I think, with that, obviously everything coming out of the exhaust ports is going to be the hottest. So this is probably the joint that gets the most stress. And it's held up just fine. I know the turbo guys, you all use the thick wall stuff, but yeah. So I'll check that, make sure the flange is still nice and flat. I don't think there was any exhaust leak at the flange. Actually, we can kind of check that. Yeah, I don't see any evidence that it was leaking there, so that's good news. And everything else is solid, so when that new flex joint comes in, I'll go ahead and cut this one off, weld the new one on, weld a new V-band on the other end. I ordered one of those. And then we'll get this thing rewrapped with the new sensor bungs in it as well. But I'm really happy about that. This thing got built in 2015, and it's been running since 2016. And run hard, obviously, because you can tell how much it cooked the header wrap. But this stuff did its job. My upper control arm bushing, which is like right here, did not cook, hasn't melted, hasn't had any issues. And this stuff took the abuse. So I'm very happy about that. So, all right, I'll get this thing back up on the lift and start going through some of the other stuff underneath. Well, UPS finally delivered my Summit order 2 days late. There might have been a little bit of rain on the ground, so that usually means I'm going to at least get 1 day of delay through UPS. Thanks, guys. Anyways, so flex coupler looks like a winner. Same diameter that I had, same length, all that. But my V-band, I guess the original one was not from Vibrant. So you can see these are machined or cast. I don't know. Maybe they're machined. They cost enough. They ought to be machined to lock into each other, same diameter, all that. But the one that was on the old flex coupler is a different diameter. So you can see when I put them up against each other, you can see the Vibrant one is taller and also skinnier. I could turn this down on the lathe and make the diameter the same, but then I'm worried that the clamp wouldn't clamp it down properly, like the tapers here are slightly different. So rather than doing that, I'm going to chuck this up in my lathe and just cut off right at the weld, and then we'll weld this guy to the coupler and just reuse it. I mean, it's in fine condition. There's no reason not to do that, other than that I spent good money on this one. So we'll save this for another project, I guess. So let me get this cut away, and then we'll line it up on here, get it welded up, and then get this welded onto the header, and hopefully be ready to put everything back together. All right, that went all right. So cut the old piece of the flex pipe off. Just took a little bit of material off of here to get rid of any of the oxidation from the weld. It almost looks like they used mild steel filler on these stainless parts. So we'll correct that. And now flex coupler, you can see the way it's assembled. Those wires protrude up a little bit above this little flange. And what we're gonna have to do is get them sitting right up against each other to weld together. So I'm gonna probably just take a flap wheel and see if we can grind those down a little bit. And as long as that goes well, we'll butt these up, get it tacked, get it welded, and then get this on the header. So far so good. We got the old coupler. I just basically went around it with a cutoff wheel right against the weld edge until I was able to basically hit it with a hammer and get it pulled free of the collector here. The V-band flange is welded up. Don't make fun of my welds. At least it's stainless rod. It's under a car. You won't see it. So now I'm gonna take the new one, slide it right on there. I'll get that welded up, and we're almost done. I need to add a couple of bungs. I'm adding a wideband O2 sensor and an EGT gauge to the system. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the bungs in while I've got this apart, and then we can rewrap the whole header, and it can go back in the car. So I've had these parts sitting at the shop for, I don't know, a couple of years at least. AEM wideband O2 sensor, so I can actually see what my fuel mixture looks like. I know the car runs rich. I've never ordered another set of jets and emulsion tubes and all that, so I'll probably have to get a whole set of those for that Weber until I'm ready to throw a Haltech on this thing. But for now, we'll be able to at least get the tuning close with this. So that's got this bung right here that'll need to be welded into the header. I'll probably do it right before that flex joint, right at the collector. And then this is an EGT probe or pyrometer. So we're gonna go ahead and weld this guy into the collector right next to that, and we'll be able to check exhaust temperatures too. So yeah, that's next. I just got to drill some holes and get these ready to go, and we'll get that welded up. All right, coupler's welded, bungs are welded. Did a quick little check for any pinholes. Not the prettiest welds, but everything's solid, everything threads together the way it should. So next step is rewrapping. So just picked up a roll of fiberglass wrap. I'm gonna soak it in water for a bit and find some gloves that I'm gonna ruin, and we'll go ahead and get this thing wrapped, let it dry before we put it back on the car. Well, that was fun. Let's never do that again. I guess 7-8 years was enough time to forget what a pain in the ass that is. So, got everything wrapped. Started a little further down on this one, partially to kind of show off the welds, because you can kind of see that from the engine bay, but also so we don't need the heat protection right there. It's really kind of kicks in right as we come around here through, near the firewall and near the upper control arms. So got it wrapped up. The stainless steel zip ties are questionable, so we'll have to keep an eye on that and make sure this thing doesn't start unraveling. If it does, we'll just safety wire it instead. But I'm gonna let this dry out in the sun, and then it should be ready to bolt back in, and we can put the engine bay back together, make sure it still runs. Yay. All right, I let that header sit out in the sun yesterday for a few hours, try and dry all the water out of it before we start it. I don't think it's a big issue either way, but better to let it dry naturally. So we got it back up in there. You can see how snug everything is. We've got the O2 sensor and the EGT sensor screwed in. For now, I've just got the wires tied up along the power wire and fuel line. I'll poke them up into the interior on another adventure. I don't need the lift for that, so I just need to open up the grommet where the main power wire goes into the dash, and I'm not ready to do that just yet. So got the exhaust all hooked back up, swapped out the super trap for just a straight pipe for now, so neighbors probably didn't hate it enough. We'll make it even louder. While I was under here, I remounted the brake proportioning valve for the rear brakes. I had previously a transporter. You can see some of the other damage. I got to replace these rear shocks. A transporter had hooked up straps in a weird way, and it ended up breaking one of the brake lines, and so I had to replace that on the side of the road. And so that proportioning valve had to get unbolted, and it was just hanging, zip tied up. So cleaned that up while we were here, double checked everything, replaced the water trap on the air system. The old one had just a slow leak. I think it just had enough debris built up in it that it needed replacing. So we took care of that. What else? Just a general kind of checkup. Got the motor mounts tightened up, tightened all the bolts for the oil pan. Hopefully that'll stop that real slow leak that it has. But if not, we'll probably blow this engine up and need to swap it out eventually anyway. So I think we're ready to put that one wheel back on and get this back on the ground. And then all I have to do is put the intake manifold back in there, and then I think we are good to go. So let's get it down and get that done and start this thing up. Time to wake the neighbors. All right, intake's back on, fuel line's hooked back up, throttle cable's hooked back up, double checked all the bolts here. I'm leaving the engine bay panels off for today. There's a show this afternoon down in Shawnee that I'm going to run out to, but I haven't had time to strip those and re-clear them, so I'll do that this coming week because Slamboree's coming up next weekend. So yeah, we'll get that all done. For now, we can just roll it like this. So let me turn the battery on and battery's already on. All right, let me put this on a tripod and let's see how this thing sounds. Burn off all of the chemicals and stuff that are on the header wrap. Probably a lot of moisture left over that I didn't evaporate out, but pretty damn good. All the noise is definitely out back, which is exactly what we wanted. So let me move the wagon real quick and we'll pull this thing out and let it idle. filter socks off of the velocity stacks really change the idle, so they're definitely choking it. Have to look into a better filter solution. Oh yeah, I gotta put the drift brake back together too. Alright. Good to have projects. But I can live with this. Alright, I'll get that handbrake back together and then I think this thing's ready to load on the trailer. Hell yeah. Alright, I'll see you guys at the show.